Okay, so I just want to quickly review what we learned yesterday. Yesterday, we concluded that the question of if one partner is made for the nether and the other one is not, whether or not we say Megiz Gaiz or Mitlish Kolish is totally in the Machloikis Bishamai and Bissel. Then Rava cleared a Shaila if you could be shoyal on your Akama. And subsequently to that, if you could be shoyal on your Afara. We brought a riot because Rabbi Yochanan said explicitly that you can be shoyal on Akama, but you cannot be shoyal on Afara. Then Rabbi had a question. If someone said Kaim L'chi, he was Mekayim it twice. If you were shoyal on the first Afara, on the first Hakama, does the second Hakama now take its place? And the Gemara resolves it, and in fact, yes. It's no different than a Shavua. And then the Gemara brought a Shaila of the schizophrenic. Someone said, Kaim L'chi, Umufur L'chi, but V'lo Seichel HaKama, Ela Imkein, Chala Hafara. So the Gemara, the Ram tells us that the Shaila is definitely there's no Hakama, and the whole question was, is there a Hafara? And the question boils down to one specific question, and that is, since he first said Kaim L'chi, Umufur L'chi, where he gave Kiyum precedence, because he mentioned it first, but his second phrase was that the Hakama should not be Chal, unless the Hafara is Chal, where he's clearly giving precedence to the Hafara over the Hakama. The question is, do you say, in fact, that he wanted to give precedence to the Hakama, since he mentioned it first, but he also wanted to give precedence to the Hafara, because he made it nine. Thank you so much. And therefore, they're both not Chal? Or do you say he only meant to give precedence to the Afar because he made it nine? And we don't need to give any credence to the fact that he mentioned Kiyum first. Because the only reason why he mentioned Kiyum first is because he couldn't possibly have said Hakama and Afar together, because people cannot articulate two words at one time. That was the Gemara Shaila. And the Gemara was pushing it from both Reb Meir and Reb Yosy. Yeah, we're not sure what happened. When I got here and I saw that it said 141, that's why I was late, because I thought it was 141. Okay, you came from the other side, so you didn't have to deal with the accident.
Yeah, so far.
So the Gemara says, Reb Meir and Reb Yosy had a machlokes. If someone said, Harezu Temuras Oila, Temuras Shlamim. Once again, those are two words that cannot be articulated at the same time. The question is, what is the intention of the person who's making the Temura? Zokt Reb Meir, he meant to make first the Oila and then the Shlamim, in which case the Oila, the Temuras Oila is Chal, the Temur Shlamim cannot be Chal afterwards. But Rabbi Yosy said, the fact that he mentioned them one after the other doesn't mean he wants them sequentially. He really wanted them both at the same time. The problem is he couldn't have possibly said them both at the same time. Therefore, it's possible that he means sequentially, but it's also possible that he means simultaneously. Zok Rabbi Yosy, ask him, and he'll tell you. So according to Rabbi Yosy, whenever someone says two phrases, you don't say that he wanted it sequentially. You always can assume that he wanted them simultaneously. Our Gemara is quite simple. Even though he mentioned Kiyum L'chi first, it doesn't mean that he wants to give any type of precedence to the Kiyum. But according to Reb Meir, who by the case of Temura says that since you said Temura's Oila first, in fact, that's what happens. Well, in our case, maybe since he said Kayim L'chi first, so the Kiyum is what happens first. Zokt Gemara, even Reb Meir would be moida in our case, because in our case he said a Tanai afterwards. He said very clearly that the Hakama should not be Chal unless the Hafara is Chal, which he didn't make himself so clear when he just said Temuras Oila, Temuras Shlamim. And therefore, even Reb Meir would agree in our case that the Hafara is Chal. And then Rabbi had a question, and he asked, if you said Kaim L'chi and Mufar L'chi, and you wanted specifically that it should be B'Vasachas, Could it possibly work? And on that, the rabbi said that anything that cannot be sequentially cannot be basachas either. Which takes us now to the third line from the bottom on Samach Tes Samach Beis, and he introduces us to a whole new set of shilas that were asked. What if? Boy Rabbi, you always had a nudnik in your class, used to pester your Rebbe and cheder. What if? So today is the what if Gemara. Today's the day where that boy gets to shine. Every dog has its day.
I find half the Masechtas are what if. What if he makes this kind of netter and that kind of netter?
Okay, every dog has his Masechta.
Okay, that's better.
Boy Rabba, Kayim l'chi hayoim mahu. If someone said, I want Kiyum today, me, I'm reading Dr. Ran. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong place. I was looking at the Mefarish. If someone said, Kayim l'chi hayoim, so does that mean he's trying to say that I want hafara tomorrow? Kayim l'chi hayoim, me, I'm reading, Commandant Mufach l'mocher, the hachika amar, Kayim l'chi hayoim bilvad. Right, I only want Kiyum to be for the day, but tomorrow I want Hafara. Oy Dilma, he doesn't want Hafara tomorrow because he didn't say Hafara. Haloi Amar La Mufur Lechilamach. So could you make the diak? Could you make the diak from his words that he just wants Kiyum today, but he would want Hafara tomorrow? Mi Amrin command Amar La Mufur Lechilamach. Oy Dilma Haloi Amar La. He didn't say it, so we don't know that he wants Hafara tomorrow. The imtim shaloymar, loymar law. If you're going to argue that since you didn't say mufar l'chilamacher, it wouldn't work. What would be amar la mufar l'chilamacher? What if it said mufar l'chilamacher, but he didn't say kaim l'chayoyim? Do you make the same dik in the opposite way? Mayu mir minon l'macher l'matzi mefer. Do you say tomorrow he can't be mefer? The Kaima L'Nidrayoim, because through his diak we say he was Makayim today, or it's because it was Makoya because he didn't do anything until tomorrow. You still have to be made for it within a day. Oy Dilma, keeping the Loy Amar law, Kaim L'Chiyayoim, or maybe since he didn't say Kaim L'Chiyayoim, we only assume that he wants that because he said Mufar L'Chilamachar. Maybe he doesn't want Kiyum today. Maybe Kiko Amar Mufar L'Chilamachar Me'ayoim Ka'amar. How is it possible to make a hafara tomorrow? Don't you have to make it on B'yom Shammai? It's by saying Me'ayoim L'Machar. It should start, the process should start today, so you're still within the deadline. So let me just ask you that question. The Gemara is only discussing if I said either Kayim L'Chiyayoim or I said Mufar L'Chilamachar. What if I said both? What if I said Kayim L'Chiyayoim, Mufar L'Chilamachar? Would that work? So let's think about it. From the first shaila, where the Gemara asked, you only said Kaim L'Chayoyim, but you didn't say Mufar L'Chilamachar, the Gemara said, shaila is maybe it's not Mufar tomorrow, because Haloyomar, you didn't say it. So it's mashma that if it's Kaim L'Chayoyim, Mufar L'Chilamachar, it would work. Right? But then the second later, the Gemara declares, well, what if I said Mufar L'Chilamachar and not Kaim L'Chayoyim? It's mashma, then it wouldn't work. The mashma that would be Mekuyim. It wouldn't be Mufar. So it's a contradictory mashmayis. Zaktiran, you're 100% right. Rabbi, who's clearing the shayla, doesn't know. He doesn't know. He's clearing if he said only kaim l'chayoyim. He's clearing only if he said mufar l'chilamacher, but he's also clearing if he said both. He's not sure about anything here. Okay? The imtim shaloymar, afilu hachi, kivin the kaimu hayoyim, l'macher command the isadami, and if you're going to say that you cannot make the kiyum, you cannot make the hafara tomorrow, because since you're mekayim today, it's too late to make the hafara tomorrow. As the Ran says, in Tim Saloimer, kivi the kaime ayoim, lemacher command the isedami, mishum the kivin the amar mufer lechila machar, since he spoke out mufer lechila machar, michlal the ukme ayoim, we say that means he meant to be mekayim today. The kivin the ukme ayoim, lemacher command the isedami, the macher in his manafara. Once you said kiyum l'chayoyim, or we take it like you meant kiyum l'chayoyim, so tomorrow your opportunity to be made for has expired. Zok Gemara, oy duma I'm sorry. So what if he's in Kaim L'Chisha? What if he was able to do all of this within the period of one day? So he's not running out the clock. Kaim L'Chisha. It should be Mekuyim for 1 hour. The next hour, you're still within your deadline to be made for. So do you say, Mi Amrin, command Amrullah, Mufalachi Acher Shadami, Idilma, Halay Amrullah, or maybe he didn't say it. Kaim L'Chisha, Ma'azot Aram, the Laydami, Shah, the Acher Shah, the Yom Machar. Mishum Dahacha Kula Yom Barafarim. Here, the whole day is within the deadline. Im Tim Zaloymar, Haloy Amarlo, if you're going to say that Kaim L'Chisha did not articulate Mufar L'Chisha afterwards, so you don't have the Afara, if that's how you're going to argue, then I would ask you, Miu Amarla Mai, what if he said Kaim L'Chisha, Mufar L'Chisha? Mi Amrinam, even the Kaimu Kaimu. Do you say once there was a kiyah made, you could no longer be made for it? Idilma kiven the kula yoma bar kama ubar afarahu. Since all day long you could make a kiyam and you could make afara kiyamar mufa lechi la'achar shah mahani. And if you say that I want afara to happen in an hour, it will work. So that is a shayla. Tashma. Let's see if we can bring a right to that shayla. So again, what is the shayla? Someone said kaim lechisha. I want to be mekuyim for an hour, and then mufar lechisha, and then it should be mufar. So do you say that the hafara helps later on, or once the kiyum sets in, there is no hafara?
Why would you not say that? We don't want to argue about deal. The whole problem was that
Because maybe once kiyum takes effect, you can't be made for anything.
You're saying Kim, right? It's not the kind. It's that second stage.
Well, the Gemara is saying even if that wouldn't work, maybe this would work because everything's being done the same day. Zaktamar Toshma. What if a woman says, Hareini Nizira, I have a nazir. Vashama Baila, Vamar Vani. And when the husband heard that she became a nazir, he said, Vani, I'm going to join her. Dr. Gemara, that Vani is as if he was Makayim her nether. Ein Yochel, now he cannot turn around and say, I'm made for your Naziris. If you hold that you could be Makayim it for an hour, and then you could be made for it, Nema Vani, the Amarhu, Al Nafshe, the Hava Nazir, maybe you could argue that at the time when he did Vani, he was Makayim her Naziris, and therefore he could be matbis in it. He could only accept upon himself what she has if she still has it. So she still has it because he was a Mekayim L'Shah, and that's how he was able to become a Nazir, by merely saying Vani. Aval Hareini Nazir di law, but her Naziris, let us say, the Shah Achas Kaima, La'achar Shah Ibai Leper. Yes, there was a Kiyam for that temporary time, but let him then turn around and be made for it, La'achar Shah. And that will still allow him to be matbis in her Naziris, because at the time he said Vani, her Naziris was still in force, and then afterwards he'll be made for it. Am I in Yachalaver? Lav Mishom, the Chiv and the Kaimoy. Doesn't this prove our Shaila? Isn't this a resolution to our Shaila? That once you're Mekayim, it takes effect, you cannot undo it later? So you don't have a ride from here at all. You know what you have a ride from here? You have a ride from here when someone says Vani, call Vani, what he means to say is, Command Amar Kaim L'Chila Olam Dami. When you're saying Vani, you're giving her your nod of approval. It's not a nod of approval, it's an absolute nod of approval. And therefore, it's not relevant to our Shaila, because it's like someone said, it should be Mekuyim forever. Our whole Shaila is only if you Mekayim it only for a short period of time. I don't think so. I think because a vote of confidence of Ani saying, I want to be just like you. But let's see the run. I might be wrong. We'll see the run. Dr. Ran, V'amar V'ani, Ein Yochel Offer. Dr. Ran, the key of the Amar V'ani, Shehitvis B'Nizirusa. He didn't just shackle his head. He jumped in with her. Goli adaita de nichale. Surely he's very pleased with this Naziris. It's as if he was Mekayim Naziris. And that's why he can't be made for. So, David, this round sounds like it's because he jumped in with her. Maybe when he said Vani, yes, he wants her Naziris to be active so that he could be matfus in it. But after that, let him be made for another. Claimer, daite, let's say his intention is Sheyehu Nazir. He wants to be a Nazir. And that's why he tapped into her Naziris. Avon Naziris to law, but her Naziris, we have to admit that at least for one Shah he was Mekayim it, because it has to be Mekuyim while he's tapping into it. But, Frank the Gemara, if you could be Mekayim for a Shah, and then after that be Mefer, then by this Naziris as well, Shah, let him be made for it after he already got what he needed from it. If it helps over there, why can't it help here by Naziris? If it does work, it shouldn't make a difference if he said at one time, inami, or the Amar Kaim L'chisha, or if he only said Kaim L'chisha, Amar Mufa. So in the case of Naziris, when he says Vani, maybe all he's saying is Kaim L'chisha. And then a half hour later, he can come along and say Mufa L'chisha. They didn't have to both be uttered out of his mouth at the same time. Elavada, it must be. It must be that once the Kiyim L'fisha took effect, you can no longer be Mefer. B'dechinon, and the Gemara pushes off the Raya. From here, you cannot bring any type of Raya at all. The Einachanami, it is possible that La'achashah Motzi Mefer when he said Kaim L'chisha. But here he didn't say Kaim L'chisha. Here by saying Vani, he's giving her a permanent Kiyim. And the Kasover Kivud Amar Vani, Stoma command Amar Kaim L'chila Oilam Dam. That's what he means when he says Vani. V'loyev Shita. This Shaila, the Gemara didn't resolve, and therefore L'chumra, we pass on L'chumra, Hilchach Lo Hava Apar. So if someone wants to be made for his nether, the nether of his wife, let him just say Mufar L'chi, not for the Ra'ikab.
Obviously, the zero is doing the same. The kind of zero, but in
I believe so, yeah. So let's say Mishnah Vayter. This is going to go back to our favorite Gemara, where we had those four cases with the Nisroikna La'av and Lo Nisroikna Laval. Mesa'av, if the father dies, so we're obviously speaking about a woman who's an Arusa, so she has a husband who is Makadasher. Lo Nisroikna Rishus Laval. The Baal does not yashin the Rishus to be able to be made for the rest of another. Shena Baal Yachal Hafer, as the Ran says. And we already went through the Brisa that tells us whether or not the Ab was made for his side of the nether before he died, and now the nether might be a little bit weaker, or whether or not the father was not made for the nether when he died. So the nether is in full force. Regardless, the husband will not get to right to make for the nether if the father dies. Mesa Baal, but on the flip side, if the husband died, there we say Nisroikna Rishus Lav. Bazeh, in this respect, Yofa Koyach Ha'av Mikoyach Habal. The father has a stronger source in being made for Nedarim than the Baal. But in a different way, Yofa Koyach Habal Mikoyach Ha'av. In other ways, the husband's koyach in his wife is much stronger. For instance, if she tells him that her father's a nasty guy, she starts getting angry at her father. Right? That's why when you marry off your daughter, when you marry off your son or your daughter, you have to realize that their spouse has a lot of influence over them. But for some reason, the Brisa, the Mishnah, lists off another advantage that the Baal has, is that Baal Mefer B'Boger. If someone has an article, I'm not sure how you read it. Is it beggar, B'Boger? B'Veger. They say a beggar can't be a chooser. So Shabal Mefer B'Veger, Va'av Eino Mefer B'Veger. So there, if she becomes a boigris, she leaves the rishus of her father, and he can no longer be made for her nedarim. But a husband can be made for the nedarim of his wife, even though she's a full adult. Frek the head of the Gemara, my timer. What is the reason? What is the reason? What is the reason that the Gemara says that meis ha'av aloy nisroikna rishus labal? And the Ran makes a very interesting point. My timer is a question that you ask when you see somewhere else it's different. So why isn't this the same way? We know that nisroikna rishus la'av, should the husband die, it's nisroikna rishus la'av. So once we know that, so my timer, why should it be any different if the father dies? Why don't you say nisroikna rishus labal? That's what my timer means, the Ran says. But in a moment, the Gemara is going to ask, how do you know b'chalal that nisroikna rishus la'av? That's not my timer. That's minola. So minola it starts off with a neutral territory. I don't know. You told me a chiddush. Where do you know it's from? My timer is an attack. Once we already know that it's nisroikna rishus la'av, so then my timer, why should it be any different with if the father dies? Why don't you say nisroikna rishus labal?
Is that a shas move or a Nedarim?
I don't know. We'll see the right side. Then we'll make that assessment. My time in fact, the Gemara. The Torah says b'nureha beisavia, and we're going to see how you see that. So let's see the Ran. My timer, the Amar Kra b'nureha beisavia. My timer lo nisroikna rishus labal kamay la'av. Once we already know that it's not nisroikna rishus la'av, why isn't it not the same? Why is there a difference? Why doesn't the husband also get that Yerusha? My timer. That's why the question here is my timer. It's an accusatory question. The Gemara asks a much more power of a question. So what is the answer? Zoktaran mashma apagav de la'av akati isa beisavia. The Rav Beisavia says that even if the father is not around, she still remains b'beisavia. In other words, the beisavia does not transfer in to the rishus of the baal. Beautiful. Now the Gemara says the first question. Really, you should ask the first question. This question first, right? Because we're starting off without knowing. Right? Meisaval nisrek l'shuslav minola. Where do we know this from? Omer Rabba, or is it Rabba, depending on the girsa? The Omer Kra v'mhaya sil ish unidare aleh. The Torah says, and the Ran says, right before it says, it discusses a single girl whose father exclusively is made for Nedarim. Then the next parsha that gets introduced, or sub parsha in parsha Shalom that gets introduced, is which is Shtei Habayis b'mashma. It sounds like there's two marriages happening over here. And therefore, makish koid me havaya shnia lekoid me havaya rishon. Let's compare her scenario, her situation before she got married to the first Oris, to the situation that she's in after the first Oris dies, but before she remarries. And we say, makish koid me havaya shnia lekoid me havaya rishon. Ma koid me havaya rishon. Just like before she got married in the first place. Av meper l'chudei. It's the father who has the exclusive control over the hafar of her nedarim. Av koid me'avai shniya. So too, after her first husband dies, before her second husband marries her, av meper l'chudei. The father takes over completely, and he can exclusively be mefer. Let's see the Ran. Makish Havaya Rishoina le Shnia, Kloimar, Shedin Shnia Kedin Rishoina. Her single years post her first husband are identical to her single years pre her first husband. Ma Koidmai Rishoina Av Mefer Lechudei, Av Koidmai Shnia Nami La'achar Misa Sabal Av Mefer Lechudei. So if she's still a Naira and she lost her first husband and she was not in the Nesua to him, she was only a Rusa to him, the father's strength comes back as if she never got married in the first place. Break the Gemara, Ema hanamili b'nedarim shaloi nidru la'aris, shaloi niru la'aris. Maybe what type of nedarim are we discussing? That the father goes back and gets his koich again. Maybe that's referring to pre-existing nedarim that she had on her before she ever got married in the first place, because those were born, so to speak, exclusively in the father's domain. But maybe if a nether was born once she was already married to the first Horus, maybe there that nether is not considered exclusively in the father's domain. And when you learn a chiddush, you got to minimize the chiddush. So maybe you only know the nedarim that she had already made before she got married to the first husband. They weren't made for them till she got married, and then the husband dies, so it goes back to the original status quo. But who said if a new nether came up while she was married that was already controlled by the husband and the father jointly, maybe such a nether the father would not be able to be made for. So you cannot say that, because even the Nedarim shaloi niru la'aris, I don't need this pasuk, this limud of being makish, koid me'avaya rishayna, the koid me'avaya shniya. I don't need that to tell me that nedarim that were made before she ever got married, the father has the exclusive rights of. It says that in the pasuk. It says mi b'nurah beisaviyah nafka. That I know anyway from a different pasuk. So from Yosy Elish, where we have this hekesh of koid me'avaya rishayna to koid me'avaya shniya, that must be telling me something that I don't know. And the next chiddush up is that even the nedarim that she made while she was married to the Horus, even those nedarim, once the Horus dies, the father could be made for on his own. Zaktaran, Ema hanamila b'nedarim shlanir l'Horus, Dumya the koid me'havaya rishayna. Those are similar, right? If we're comparing them, let's compare it equal for equal. Shlanir l'Horus klal. Avol b'nedarim shanir l'Horus kloimar sheshama oisam koidem shemeis. The Horus heard them before he died. La'olam emalach. Let's argue that once the Horus dies, the father cannot be made for them. And the Gemara answers, I don't need a hekesh for. Even the Lezacha ben Horus klal, since the Horus never was in these nedarim, and the Ram is explaining that I was wrong. It doesn't mean only nedarim that she made before she got married the first time. It even refers to nedarim that she made when she was married, but her husband never heard them. That also classifies in the same class as the nedarim that she made before she got married in the first place. And therefore, since you know all that from Benurah Beisaviyah, the Hekesha, the extra Hekesh, is Nedarim Sheniru La'aris Itzra. We needed to tell you that even if her first husband knew about these Nedarim, and then the first husband dies, the Avalach Hudei Mefer. Zoktaran, don't make a mistake. We're speaking if she's still single, meaning her first husband died and she did not remarry. Miyu Davka b'shaloi nisarso. She didn't remarry a second time. Aval nisarso, but if she remarried a second time, Tanya Dakamon, we have a Meforsha Mishnah that we already learned in the Gemara earlier. Behedra, the Avia Ubayla Ha'acharain Mafir Nedareh. Remember, we also had Ishka Vais Ladodi that the second husband steps right into the shoes of the first husband, so he takes over that position. Once she's remarried, you cannot compare that situation to Kaid Me'avai Rishayna. We could only compare the situation where she's single after her first husband, before she marries her second husband. That you can compare to Kaid Me'avai Rishayna. Gewaltig. Sagt er more weiter. Vazeh Yafa Koyach Ha'av Mikoyach Ha'bal. Yet, if she's a boigress, then it's Yafa Koyach Habal Mikoyach Ha'av. So, Frank the Gemara, what exactly is this case of boigress? She became a boigress, the father cannot be made for her nedarim, but the husband could. What was exactly the case? Let's drill down. When did she make the nedarim? When did she be made for the nedarim? Hechidam. Ilema Shekitsha Keshi Naira. What are you going to do if he was Makadasher when she was a Naira? And that means when he was Makadasher, it was still a joint effort between him and his father-in-law. And then she aged and she became a boigress. Now the father's schus on her drops off. So the father, it should be similar to if the father died. right? When she entered the marriage, it was a joint effort. Then the father dies, or she becomes a boigress. Two different ways of her shaking her father's control over her. They should have the same halacha. Zok the Gemara Michti. Let's analyze this. Misa meitzia mayat. We know that if he dies, that also releases her from the rishus of her father. Ubagrus, but if she becomes an adult, we also say that it's meitzia mishusav. So let's say they should both have the same halacha. Ma misa loydnis roik the rishus labal. Just like had the father died while she was still a naira, the Baal wouldn't take over and wouldn't be able to continue to be made for those Nedarim that pre-existed this situation. Av Bagrus, so too, if she made a nether when she was a naira Hamur Urasa, and then she became a Bagrus. So once again, she shook the koyach of the father. We won't say that the husband now takes over the father's part, and he still needs the father. But she doesn't have the father, so she's stuck. We still need the father's koyach, because the husband doesn't get it, so the husband can't do the full afara. The father lost his koyach, so now she can't rely on the afara. She'll have to be shoyal by a chacham if she wants to get rid of the nether.
It's a lingering measure that nobody heard about yet. We're talking about a 1 day thing.
Right. So even if someone heard it,
Then you lost your
it had to happen within a day. All this had to happen within a day.
They got married. She became a boigress. Well, first she made that there. They got married.
Or she could have become a boigress. She could have got married as a naira, made a nether as a naira, and then became a boigress. Yeah. Ella shakitsha he boigress. So we're going to have to say that the only time where the husband could take over completely, and he could be made for the nether without the father, is shakitsha kashi boigress. He only made kedushin on her. She was an elta de Michael. She was already 12 and a half. Could you imagine? She was already 12 and a half, and she wasn't married yet. Rahman al-Islam. He married her when she became a boigress. So Zog to Gemara, if he married her when she's a boigress, and the chiddush is that only the husband's made for her nedarim and not the father, I don't need our Mishnah here to tell me that chiddush. Hatanina chadazimna, we actually have the next Mishnah tells us the same thing. So the Tana is not going to be repeating things. So why would the Tana tell us here that if someone marries a boigress, he is exclusively in charge of her nedarim? That's what the next Mishnah is discussing. And let's go analyze the next Mishnah. It says in the Mishnah, "Haboigress shesha yud beis chodesh." If someone married a boigress, but when you make kedushin on a boigress, she's not yours yet, because you're not mechuyev in her mezainis. You only have control over her nedarim once you're mechuyev to support her. But if she's already married, if you're already mekudeshes for 12 months, even if you didn't make the nesuin yet, you didn't make the party yet, we're mechayiv you already with mezainis. Now, that's going to be the kasha. You already see that a boigress, he is matra nedarim. But the Gemara gets off track. Once the Gemara quotes that Mishnah, the Gemara now discusses a problem minei bei with the Mishnah. So we have a kasha. Why does the Mishnah here need to tell us about a boigress if that's what the next Mishnah tells us? But now we're putting that aside because we're going to turn our attention to now analyze that Mishnah minei bei. No. Anytime the husband has exclusive rights to be made for her, he cannot be made for pre-existing conditions. Right? That he always is the father for. The only time he can be made for something that pre-existed him is if he has a partnership with the father going on. Which means those nedarim, there's no hope for, unless you show them. Okay, so Dr. Gemara, this doesn't make any sense. Amrit, you're saying haboigris shesasa shnei masar chodesh. A boigris doesn't, a husband doesn't become a chuyev in mezoinis of his wife who's a boigris after 12 months. The boigris talam shnei masar chodesh. The boigris belam ejoyim sagila. The halacha is if someone marries a boigris, he has only 30 days to make the nisuin. A boigris is much more quick to be ready to get married, to make the nisuin. So the whole mission that says that a boigris, the ability to be made for nedarim, which is linked to his chiyuv to give her mezainis happens after 12 months. It happens after 30 days. And the Ran gives us a little bit of insight. Zok to Gemara. Elishakitcha kishi baigris. Ubayis l'meimar. So what is our Mishnah saying? The kivan she'ein ala rishus since now that she's a baigris, her father has no control over her. Kol shegia zman shenosnu lechachamim la'aris varusa l'parnis esatzmon. Once their deadline has arrived, the deadline that Chazal gave them to come to the Nisuin, kivan de mikan ve'elech ba chayev b'mzayin seah kedisa b'perek afalpi. Since from this point on, whether or not the husband took her in and made the Nisuin or not, he's still chayev to support her. Yofer, therefore, he now has the schools to be made for her Nedarim as well. Correct, Gemara. I don't need our Mishnah to tell me that. In this very parak, in the next Mishnah, we're already taught this. Why would the Tana say the same halacha twice? Before we deal with that kasha, daik bach masnisa basraisa, by masnisa basraisa, umafarish law. Now that we've brought up this Mishnah, let's analyze this brisa because it on its face does not make any sense. And the Gemara asks, Lama li shnei masar chodesh plus shloshim sagira. Zoktaran, we need some background here. To Rav Huna hachis svirli. This is what Rav Huna holds. Beperak alfapi, shalei pasku chachamim leboigris el shloshim yai. A boigris only has 30 days to prepare herself for the Nisuin, him as well, and therefore after 30 days, he has to start supporting her. And we said, and then as an extension of that, he could be made for her Nedar. Even though we slugged up Rav Huna, so then what's the kash? You need 12 months. But we also came out, the kol sha'abru aleh yud beis chodesh mishabagra. What happens if you marry a woman long after she became a boigris? She was a boigris a year ago. So she's already a boigris for a year. If you marry a woman like that, then she only gets 30 days. So this whole thing that a boigris gets 12 months is only if you married her immediately when she became a boigris. Then she has 12 months. But the 12 months, if 12 months have already elapsed since she became a boigris, now she only has 30 days. So once that halacha is oktaran, v'loy mishkachas law sheyehula yud beis chodesh ela b'niskacha b'yom sheschil liboger. The only time she would have to keep, the only time there would be a 12-month delay until the husband has to start being mefarnes her is only if she got married the day she became a boigris, because she has to wait out the whole clock of 12 months. But any time later than that, then she wouldn't have to wait out 12 months. It will be a little bit less than 12 months, because if she has her 30 days and then just till the 12 months expire. So she doesn't have a full 12 months. And this is what the Gemara is asking. The Gemara is not really asking that you always need 30 days. But the Gemara is asking is, you definitely don't always need 12 months. So why would the Tana chap on the case of a boigris that waited 12 months? You're right. Every boigris that waits 12 months, for sure there'll be a chiv and mezainis. But it's such an unlikely scenario where a boigris will ever have to wait the full 12 months, because it's only relevant if she got married the first day that she became a boigris. The boigris ain't laws man kotzer. There's no specific period of time after the erishin where the chiv mezainis clicks in. It all depends when she became a boigris, how recently she became a boigris. So the only time that we can say for sure he has leeway is 30 days, right? That every boigris, no matter when you married her, has 30 days. But very few boigrisin have 12 months. So therefore, avaloi mishkachas law, kol shekitcha, kishi boigris, shetricha yud beis chodesh, elokesh and iskacha, v'yamishin levagrus. It only occurs that the full 12 months is if he was makadosh the first day. So it's not logical that the Mishnah should use 12 months as a baseline when that's a very rare situation. Because of such an unlikely case where he married her exactly on that day, The Mishnah should have said the Boigris either whenever her time expires or 30 days. But to pick the most unlikely scenario, that's not logical. And therefore, the Gemara answers, the Gemara answers, you're right. It's not Boigris Sheshasa Yud Beis Chodesh. It's two different cases. Tani Boigris, either a Boigris, and a Boigris is anywhere between 30 days and 12 months, or even a Naira Sheshasa Yud Beis Chodesh. Even a Naira who waited 12 months, and now the husband has to be Mefinaser, he could be made for her Nidar. So let's see what the Ran says. Tani Boigris Sheshasa Yud Beis Chodesh. Claimer, Boigris Kedina. Shizmana Bechasav Yosy Kedechasib. A Boigris whenever the Chiv Mizonis clicks in, and that could be variable. But the Hanaira Sheshasa Shmana Kotzav law, a Naira who waited the full 12 months, since the husband is chayiv in her mizonis, he can be made for. We still have a problem here, because why does our Mishnah tell us the halacha of Boigris if the next Mishnah tells us this same halacha? So this is a classic. This is such a classic that we're about to learn. Zok to Gemara, Amrit, ha-Boigris sheshasa shneimas chodesh. I'm sorry, I went back a little bit. And for the Gemara, Tani, Boigris, I'm sorry, Nikol Makim Kasha. I keep on going back. Nikol Makim Kasha. Zok Tamar, I have two terutzim. Either the main Boigris is our Mishnah, and there it mentions it for a different reason, or the main Boigris is their Mishnah, and we're just mentioning it for a different reason. So if I say Mahacha Davka, you might say that this is the main place where the Tana wanted to share with us the halacha Boigris. Boigris Katani Hasam. So why did the Mishnah later mention this Boigris again? Is to tell us that it's a stam, the achrach machlokes, where you don't paskin like the stam Mishnah. Mishum de boy yefluge Rabbi Elazar v'Rabbanan. Because we want Rabbi Elazar and Rabbanan, we want you to know there's a machlokes about this, and we're not going to paskin like the stam. So fake around the push of the gotcha. If we're saying what do you mean? Here's the main. Here's the main because we want the stam v'achach machlokes. Well, then the next Mishnah with the machlokes is very important because it's telling us that you don't pass like our Mishnah. So what do you mean this is the ikr? So you got to see the Ran. Got to see the Ran on this. This is mamish a classic Ran. Zok Ran, Iboy Sema, Boigris Docha Davka. The main Boigris is here. Behind the Katani Lahasam is only Mishum the Boy Lafluge, Rabbi Elazar v'Rabbanan. He wanted to tell us that this is a stam v'achach machlokes. Umishumaki Hadav v'Tana La Lashminan the Lav Divrei HaKohen. You should know, even though our Mishnah says it's stam, it's not the opinion of everybody. Frekt around the Kosher Beina. I listened to Gemara, so I don't understand the Gemara is saying that here's the ikr. That's the ikr. That's telling us that this is under dispute. The Gemara Boigris Docha Davka, the Adarabba, Mishnah Besraisa Davka, Ulugafar Itzruch. You really need it. It's not just Agav Gora. Lashmi Inan the Lanisma Chastama Kamar. You need it to tell you that don't rely on our Mishnah because our Mishnah is likely be the Hilchasa. Davalistam Vakaf Machlekes. So listen to this. The nearly. What the Gemara says, the Chikamar Boigris Docha Davka, it's Lav Davka. I promised, but I didn't promise to keep my promise. When the Mishnah is Davka, when the Gemara says that the Mishnah here is Davka, it's Lav Davka. I just love that. Elalaimer, the Gemara is just trying to say that Masnisin Basraisa is Basar Kamaisa Griva. The second Mishnah is sort of continuing and clarifying what we said in the first Mishnah as a Stam Mishnah. The Askal Batana Lashminan Dina Bibagris Elabahai Masnisin Kamaisa Shari Lemisnaya. The Tana here in earnest wants to tell us the halacha Boigris. It's not just quoting Boigris Agavarchai. The Tana here, with intent, wants to start at least the sugya of Boigris, even though the Tana knows that he's going to clarify it with a stam v'achach machlokes later on. That's all it means to say. The Iboy Yisema, or the second shot is the Iboy Yisema Boigris Davka, the next Mishnah that discusses Boigris. That's the main Mishnah where the Tana wanted to discuss Boigris. But I did the Nasiv Reisha Bezeh Nasiv Sefer Nami Bezeh. We were trying to show Bezeh Yachakayach Ha'av So now we wanted an example of B'zeh Yofa Koyach Habal, so we just picked that as an example, but not that this is really the place where the Tana wants to discuss. The Lacha Boigris, he's just trying to give an example of where it's Yofa Koyach Habal. The boy is saying Boigris doesn't Davka. The Hasam who shehischal Tana Lach Meina did Boigris. Really, it's the next Mishnah where the Tana is focusing on the Lacha Boigris. The Masnizin Kamaisa ain't Torah Stamalem. Our mission doesn't even have a stam because it's not even bringing it down to discuss Boigris. It's just Agavarcha. And the ID the Nasiv Reisha Bezu Yofa Koyach Ha'av the Koyach Habal Nokat Nami Aliba the Chatana. We have an example of the Bedover Acher Yofa Koyach Habal and Koyach Ha'av. We have one way where the Av also has a stronger Koyach than with a Baal has a stronger Koyach than the Av. Okay, Gavaltik, we'll stop here.
What should we go